Okay, so with that, let's start off with item number one, financial impact. Who's taking the lead on that, Mark?
You're on mute, Mark.
First. Okay, now can you hear me? All right. Well, just to quickly go over that, we do have the city manager has reported and is going to report in more detail with his budget presentation. There's projected budget impacts from COVID-19, and Adam may be able to share some more detail on this as well. But the general fund in the current year budget is expected to have a reduction in revenue of $4.6 million. And that'll continue over into the next year, which next fiscal year begins July 1st. It's expected another $2 million there. So that would be a loss, total revenue to the general fund of $6.6 million. But then on top of that, there's losses to our sales tax funds as well. The police sales tax, the fire sales tax, the parks sales tax, stormwater sales tax, street sales tax, and the transient guest tax that used for tourism. So altogether, we expect that the shortfall for the current fiscal year is going to be $8.3 million. But altogether, including the first part of next year, will be $11.8 million. So no doubt that you can't have reductions like that without having an impact on projects that are planned. And so some of the projects that we were really looking forward to doing in public works projects, parks projects, various kinds, including ones that are shown on the honor roll work plan that we went over, those 48 projects, there's a few of those that are going to be delayed. So today we're going to be talking about some of the bigger ones, giving you some update about that. But this just kind of gives you an overview of how the pandemic has affected city finances and it's going to impact our planned work plan.
Anybody have any questions, thoughts, concerns on that? Having spoken to the Square Design Committee, they're completely understanding of the impact that this has, obviously. So moving forward, how we have to gear down and reconfigure the time frames of some of our projects is have some great understanding and patience with this for sure. If no one has any further questions on COVID-19 and the funding impact that this will have, we'll just move forward with the streetscape. Mark?
Yeah, Adam has agreed to come here and be part of this meeting to share that. He's the project manager for the streetscape project, and I know he's been working very closely with you, Mr. Chairman, and Mayor Weir on that program. And so Adam is going to give us a little bit of a update on the Square streetscape, and then we could get into some things that we've talked about maybe to help us get over the hump a little bit on the Square. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind jumping in there and giving an update on that Square streetscape planning.
Sure, I'll start this off, and Tim may need to chime in as we go here too. But as you all recall, we had a meeting earlier this year and presented some ideas for the streetscaping project, and based on some of that feedback, we took a step back and developed a plan that accelerated the timeline that we had originally anticipated. But as a result of what Mark just spoke about with some of our revenue projected shortfalls that we anticipate, and primarily in street sales tax, as well as in the general fund. What we'd probably propose to you all would be to delay this project a year, to allow revenues to stabilize a bit. And it would also, as an upside, it would allow us to leverage some of the Truman Connected TAP funds that are available for us, so we can leverage that project a little bit more, because we could go with a more traditional design bid build project delivery versus a design build that we were planning on using due to the accelerated timeline. So there's a slight advantage to that. In total, I believe that there is about $3.8 million of reductions from this fiscal year and next year that are recommended as part of in the street sales tax fund. So, and this would be one of them, to move this one out.
Sure.
Let me ask a question, Adam and Councilman Perkins. So what was anticipated in the time, I mean, what we were sort of driving towards in this time frame was looking at a like 2020, first quarter of 2020, second quarter of 2020, getting going on this and really using the entire year, this year, to start doing the intersection improvements, trees, lighting, sidewalk improvements, Truman Connect, as you say. I mean, that's on a different time frame, kind of a staggered time frame. So, I mean, obviously we understand the money's not there to fund what we had planned. I mean, there's just no two ways about that. And we don't know when it's going to rebound. But I guess what I'm reluctant to say is, let's just flip it to the other calendar year. I think there may be, and I'm certainly not, hope that this doesn't happen, but, fairly soon, the Chamber of Commerce is going to decide if it's going to have Santa Calagon in the summer, which seems unlikely, or postpone it to the fall, which, may be possible, or just cancel it for this year and postpone it to next year. So one of the things I've been concerned about with this project is working around Santa Calagon. I mean, we had to be very aggressive with the farmers market to get it delivered before Santa Calagon, and we did it, and we're proud of it, but it did, it was pretty intense, to make that happen. So there may be, I would just say let's postpone, but I would prefer to maybe leave that a little bit more open-ended instead of just saying we're just going to put it on the shelf for a year, and in 1 year from this date, pull it off the shelf, and just, have a better sense of how things go, which none of us can predict. And maybe there is some work that can be completed if we have really free and open access to the square without Santa Calagon.
Mayor, so we have taken advantage of some of the lower traffic that is experiencing right now. We did a survey, we've done a traffic study pre-pandemic. So there's some basic groundwork that is done. Construction would not have started this year regardless. This was design, was going to commence this year. We were, I think, pretty close on having the RFP ready for a design build firm to come in and be our partner. And the design for that would have started probably in the fall, with construction starting the following year in 2021. So, and if I remember correctly, Councilman Perkins and I went to a design committee meeting. I don't know, was that in February or January? And trying to come up with how we could use this year as with Santa Calagon as a bit of a test case to understand if some modifications could be made for the following year to account for construction activity at the same time Santa Calagon. Not, if I don't want to put words in the committee's mouth, but I think there were some reasonable adjustments that could have been made to accommodate both happening at the same time. Is that fair, Councilman?
Yeah, I think that sums it up. We spent, probably close to 2 hours trying to figure out some of the better ways to move some things and to change others, but to leave the experience whole by just doing some shifting. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And to be clear, if we do want to continue this project, we will need to start design work, sooner rather than later anyway. We would probably need to start some of that even this year, depending on how we leverage different funding sources. So
Right.
To continue along the same thought the mayor was having and looking at our design or timeline sheet, there are some of those things that we can do that are very less expensive, but still on the list that has to be done as we start moving forward. And being concerned with our finances, some of these things would be more appropriate to do as opposed to some of our larger ones. The design, I think, is the next logical step that does not cost a significant amount of dollars and it has to be done to move forward. This would be a recommendation that I would have to the committee that we move forward with the design. I think the cost of that is approximately $18,000 to move forward with that.
So the surveys is complete, the traffic study is complete. Design that previous budget and probably included the survey and traffic study costs. But a full design, getting a design from in here is going to be a bit more than that. And I apologize for that. What we're looking at right now is to the extent to which we can use some CDBG dollars for design work, and we're trying to confirm some of that right now. We're carrying over a little bit of money there, and we can redeploy that for design. We're going to try to do that. And that would allow us to proceed.
Okay. And also, if the Square Design Committee, they understand where we're at financially as well and are working different avenues and different possible resources for grants. AARP is one that has a tremendous amount of grant funding out there, possibly for different things that would fit in this avenue that they're exploring. But to help them and other groups, I mean, having the design done to produce when they apply for these grants is pretty important to have, so they can show what grant money is going to be funded. So they are looking at different avenues as well for a true partnership here.
That's great to hear.
Hey guys, it's Laurie Dean.
Hi, Laurie.
My communications stopped right when Mayor Rare was beginning to talk about Santa Calagon, so I missed a lot of that. The only thing I would add is that we don't assume anything with the chamber in Santa Calagon, and that we make sure that we are keeping them in good communication. It's one of the roles I have by being on this committee, but there's not been any official statement about this year's the revenue that would be lost to the chamber, and quite frankly, I think the city it's just such a big celebration. So I would just want to make sure that we truly are very thoughtful about any plans with the square streetscape and how it, would affect the chamber.
So Lori, to just tell you what you missed, I falsely assumed that, I was wrong on the construction schedule. So nothing is planned for construction for this year, regardless of what happens with Santa Calagon. So there would be no anticipated disruption or displacement. And I'm certainly not presuming anything. I know that there's several discussions that are happening about Santa Calagon, and those are certainly, we're hope to be, kept informed about those. But, my point was, while we have, we've made good use of, the unfortunate situation of not having much activity on the square to get some surveying and traffic study work done. So I'm just, thinking about, if we're talking about this in other aspects of the city too, is, during a time where you're not going to upset or disrupt anything, what can you get, what could you get done? How could you take advantage of that opportunity if there were, if to happen?
I totally agree. I think I was thinking through more, we don't have it this year, and then the effect next year's, just making sure that we have a really solid plan, because construction would definitely start, 2021, correct?
That was the original plan, was that we were going to test some different staging concepts and how people were arranged this year with Santa Calagon. And then that would allow us to implement those kinds of things in 2021 whenever we would be in construction. What I was saying where probably you got cut off was that working with the design committee and some of the representatives from Santa Calagon, and I don't know if that got taken back to the chamber or not after our meeting, or where that communication is. So I don't want to presume anything. But it sounded like some of the adjustments that could be made to accommodate construction at the same time at Santa Calagon would have been very feasible and doable. So us needing to work around Santa Calagon is maybe not as big a hurdle as we all anticipated. Perhaps we were going to test it out this year a little bit. That was the idea where we left things.
All right, super.
But I don't know when from that design committee meeting where those discussions went after that. So I don't want to speak for anybody on that group.
As memory serves me, we had intended to go ahead and work around Santa Calagon this year. That's why they had taken most of the stuff, moved it off of the square onto the side streets. Is that correct?
Well, the time frame was going to be a little different than what we had anticipated. As of now, we were anticipating starting January of 21 and going to December of 21. This year, the meeting that Adam and I had, January, February-ish, was to see how we could move some of the vending spots, where some of the eateries could be, how that would look with freeing up some of the center portion around the county courthouse, what some of the pedestrian flow would look like, some of the little minutia like that. And Adam is correct. As we were placing these things in real time on the computer screen and the layout, it fit real well. There was not a tremendous amount of disruption that we initially thought there would be. After leaving that meeting, I don't know where the chamber was very much involved with that discussion. We're what Adam was saying, where that portion of the discussion is with the membership and the Santa Calagon board. I'm not sure either, but don't want to speak to that. But the disruptions are going to be very minimal. If there's no more questions on the Square Streetscapes, we'll jump down to the next topic, the Justice Center.
All right. So a quick update on the Justice Center project. I think earlier this winter, probably in January or so, we met with this committee and provided an update on our progress and status with working with our partners on this project, which included the formation of a CID. We were kind of ready to move on to the next step of that project and start the kind of on the ground work in relation to the CID, creating the CID, and some of the more concrete design work associated with the Justice Center. At that time, the direction from the committee was to go back to our partner and see about more of a shared risk concept that I think that was the original model that the council and the committee thought was we were going with. And so we took that direction back to our partner and discussed, what kind of a shared risk model would look like, where, if they are successful, they benefit, but if not, we all have a little bit of skin in the game, so to speak. After discussing it with them and then their leadership, they decided that was not a model that they were willing to pursue. They certainly want to work with us at some level if we ever wanted to, but it was not under kind of a mutual benefit shared risk model that the committee had expressed a desire for. So in addition to that, we do not have any kind of funding source available to support this project. The grant that we had used for some of that preliminary work is virtually tapped out, and it's being used for some kind of more critical infrastructure type things with public safety. But I would say, as part of the proposed budget, there are some technical investments that are proposed that would move tech services and the server room from the public safety building to City Hall, and would reduce the number of servers we have, and that would free up the top floor of the public safety building. I realize that's a temporary, it's a stopgap as we grow our police force, but it is an opportunity to grow the police force in their existing facility while we, kind of reassess things and come up with another long-term solution to address this need, which is a real need, but maybe we have a little bit more time to focus on that and come up with a new strategy.
I'd like to just chime in, and this is real crystal ball stuff, so bear with me. But in looking at this CARES Act money that is coming to the county that we can apply for, and then, however many trillions of dollars are out there to help to respond to the impact of COVID, which does not include, I will continue to say, any replacement money for lost revenues. So, the street sales tax money that we're losing, the, police and fire sales tax money that we're losing, the transient guest tax that we're losing, the general fund all that money that we're losing that's causing us to have to make these difficult decisions. There's no replacement funding for any of that. The good news is that our use tax money is, I think January we collected 90,000. March we collected 290,000. So that's the only fund in the city that's seeing growth. But when I look at this COVID money, relief money, and I think, well, how can we use it? Because I'm becoming concerned that the state of Missouri is going to have to return that money to the federal government because they're not going to have enough, create enough ways to meet the criteria. So I've just been thinking and having just really, some high level, just brainstorming ideas about how can we use that money to improve our facilities? This is, the new normal, when we get to that point, which we're not in now, is probably going to require a lot more new protocols, just like, we take our shoes off at the airport. There's going to be things like, how do you have an up elevator and a down elevator? How are we going to put people in our detention center and safely distance them from one another? How are we going to put our firefighters in fire stations and safely distance them? How are we going to put police at shift change in the locker rooms and in the weight room and protect them? So I think there is an opportunity. We may not be able to deliver the exact same product that we envisioned and planned for, but how are you going to let people into the courtroom with a mask over their face? That's something that is located within City Hall. So, if we had the luxury of all kinds of time, which we don't, we could come up with some really phenomenal plans. But I do think that we should continue to not necessarily pursue that project as we envisioned it, but continue to pursue the needs, which were getting court out of City Hall, creating more space for our police officers, and creating a safer, more functional detention center. And I think those needs are even greater now than they were before, because of the necessity that there's going to be, at least for some time and probably forever, to protect people from being infected in our workplace. And there's an opportunity potentially to, very rapidly pull together some of those thoughts and see if they pass muster to qualify for some of this $123 million that's sitting in a bank account at Jackson County.
Well, Mayor, along those lines that we've been thinking, one of the reasons why we were looking at a proposed new police building was because of ours is so antiquated, particularly the lack of room for our police officers, and also the safety of our holding stuff that could come into question and some other things. But then you add the COVID-19 on top of that, which can add its own set of problems. In your discussions with some of the more top officials in the county and the state, is that something you believe that we could apply for and aggressively seek after?
I do. I had a conversation with Troy Schulte on another matter. He met with me and a few of the other people that I serve on the Arts KC board with about some things. And I just sort of asked Troy, you know, as he's sorting out how to take, you know, sort of requests for this money, I said, can it be used for planning dollars? And he said, yes. It needs to be spent by the end of the year. So that's a challenge. But Steve McDowell, who I know many of you know, who's a friend of mine, and he is an architect with BNIM, and they worked on the Rockwood Golf Course plan for us and some other projects. Some of our sustainability projects was in that meeting too. And, you know, he was pretty intrigued by that idea as well, is how do you use some of that money for planning for improving our facilities. I mean, I know that our staff, Mark and Adam and Lisa and Zach, are been working through this for weeks, is how do we start safely bringing people back to work? But it might be a very unique opportunity for us to tap into that money for planning for needs that still exist. And it may not be that campus that we envisioned. It may be, you know, I'm pointing at the police station. It might be, you know, retrofitting some of our buildings. And maybe in a few years, we'll all just go back to the way things always were. But I doubt it. But we know right now that our detention center is not adequate to separate people safely the way they need to be. And it certainly is inadequate if people are COVID positive or symptomatic and need to be detained in our jail. I mean, we can't put an ankle bracelet on everybody and let them out. And, you know, we can't let people enter City Hall with their face covered up. So, you know, there's just all sorts of technology and security and cybersecurity and, you know, safety precautions for our employees and our public that we might be able to get very creative about and start planning a different type of project that still achieves our needs.
Right. And a portion of the other conversation that we've had is as we hire new officers and they're brought on board, I mean, at some point, we're just going to run out of space, locker room space, to where they can come in and change and shower before they go home and do all those needs and stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, we're out of that space now. I mean, they have to bring their own towel and knit washcloth from home. I mean, we don't have laundry for them. I mean, these are not going to be okay. I mean, they weren't okay before, and they're sure as heck not okay with a virus going gangbusters through our world.
For sure.
So Eileen, Mayor Ware, are you looking for action from this committee to say, hey, let's shift and do some brainstorming to solve these problems so that we can get something presented to the state or to the county dollars to get our,
well, I would
get our
say
hands on some of it?
let's not lose sight of why we wanted to do the Justice Center project in the first place. It wasn't because we were dying to go out and create a CID and knock on doors. It was because we had needs for our facilities, and those needs haven't gone away. I am not an expert on the CARES Act. Zach and I know Adam and Mark have looked at that very, very closely, but I would say it would be probably wise for this committee to maybe make a recommendation to the city manager's office that, you know, that this Justice Center project be considered for in a different way to use that CARES Act money for planning to create a safer environment for our officers, the public, the people coming to court, the people in our, who have to be detained in our detention center. And, you know, make a recommendation to explore that as a possible use for the money that's available. Because there's not many uses. I mean, we're struggling. And I know that, and, you know, the county administrator who's in charge of this, you know, working through this on the county side, thought that that was, you know, a pretty innovative idea about how to use this for planning, because we can't use it for construction because we can't get something built in the timeline that it's going to take to get the money spent. But that would be something that I would certainly throw in the discussion. Mark, Adam, you're more of an expert on this than me, so does that seem to make sense?
It does to me. I think it's a great idea to try that. As I think Zach said, that the CARES Act is pretty insistent that it be COVID related, anything that we would spend any money we got from, and they weren't just going to make us whole for lost revenue, but things that are truly COVID related. And I think you're making a great point that that because of COVID, we have an increased need to change these facilities, and we're going to have to. And so that makes it a legitimate use of those funds, I think. But that's my opinion anyway.
Well, unless I hear any objections from the committee members, then I would request that our staff travel those avenues of the COVID, the CARES Act relief funds to see what we can do for any type of design planning to help this project move along. And also, Adam, what would be staff's recommendations for next steps to, since they are now, Burns and Mac, they are now out of this process, who and what should we do next to keep this moving forward on the front burner?
So our partner was a group of a construction management firm, a design firm, and a couple attorneys, two design firms, and led by J.E. Dunn. I think, again, we're pretty well tapped out of any kind of funding resource, short of this, of any kind of COVID money. I think we're kind of tapped on being able to engage any more designers. But I think this concept is a great idea that we need to fully explore to see if anything's available. So that'd be my recommendation, is probably let's vet this concept out, run this to ground, and see what our options are there, and then we'll reassess after that.
Okay, so we'll exhaust this avenue. And sorry I said Burns and Mac, J.E. Dunn, since they're out of that now. So let's exhaust this and kind of regroup, see what we can get for this.
Okay.
Moving on, next, 24 Highway Bridge project. Mr. McDonough or Randall.
Yeah, well, I could just quickly say that, the last communication we had with MoDOT inspector on the project was they expected the 24 Highway Bridge to be done by June 1st. So really any time now it could be done. But that did not include the walkways underneath the bridge, but did not include the murals that were to be installed there. That was part of the city's part of the funding. It's all set up for the murals, but and the artist for the murals has been selected. The Mayor's Commission, Advisory Commission on the Arts selected an artist for the project last week, and he's willing to go forward at any time that we have funds. we had a requisition earlier for it, which we've since avoided. And so I think what we're going to probably do is enter another requisition, but it's going to be held as all city funds are being frozen in finance right now. And of course, perhaps that's another thing that that could be a some other additional funds come into play here that might help us be able to complete that project. But for now, what we're going to do is try to just get all the paperwork done, and we'll hold it until such time as the funds are unfrozen.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Randall. So along that same vein, just got a quick update that 24 Highway Phase 1 agreement was approved by the City Council on April 6th. So we were moving forward with that. I think that's a great partnership that we have with MoDOT and leveraging a tremendous amount of money. And that is an enhancement from 291 to River Boulevard. So that is something that is greatly needed and moving forward on. Any other questions, comments on 24 Highway Bridge?
I probably should have, pardon me, I probably should have asked if Tim had anything to comment on there. Was that substantially right, Tim, what I said about the building? The bridge is substantially complete. I guess it's going to be done by June 1st. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I mean, pretty close. Actually, I think I was told July, but you know, somewhere around then. So, which I think is ahead of when they originally said. So that's good news. And I would add too about 24 Highway, the second phase of the improvements that'll go west of River. The agreement for Burns and McDonald to do that design is actually coming before the council at the next council meeting. So that's moving forward as well.
That's good. Thank you, Tim. Well, this next step is other business comments. One that I have is something that we're going back to the Independence Square and trying to reopen. We're in phase 1 now of reopening, given the Jackson County guidelines. And one of the brainstorming thoughts and ideas is to, and you could probably speak a little bit more eloquently than I can, Mark, on this, allowing outside seating expansion on the square, permitting outside alcoholic beverages. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Well, you know, I know that the mayor knows a lot about this as well, and I know you, Councilman, have been talking to the folks on the square and in Inglewood about it. And Tom Scannell could actually, who's on the meeting here, also can talk about the details of that, you know, the liquor license expansion and all that. But that basically the idea is that to try to use this time to use sidewalks, perhaps to expand serving area at restaurants so that they can increase social distancing, but, you know, serve more customers. And it would require out of the box thinking by the city. And I think that the council is going to, my understanding, the council is going to look at some ideas that can be done. It sort of, in a way, reminds you of the, you know, we talked about doing a preliminary phase of the streetscape, which we was elected not to do that, when to go right ahead into construction. But the idea of perhaps we can use mark out areas right now for temporary seating that might end up becoming permanent later when we actually do construction, that could help us during this crisis. But I know the mayor's done some thoughts on this as well. And I don't know if the mayor, if you want to weigh in on that. And I know Tom might be able to talk about some of the regulatory aspects of it too.
You guys are going to think all I do is sit around and come up with ideas during this period of time. But well, honestly, I did hear from a couple of our local businesses over the last several weeks about saying, how can we prepare for reopening? And create social distancing, especially some of our, breweries and wine bars and places that don't serve food or don't have, what we call a class 2 food license, which, it really started as a conversation about, can we amend our liquor laws to allow for outside seating. But then I saw in Kansas City that Westport was proposing that they close off some of the streets in Westport to vehicle traffic and make them pedestrian only. I think we've all probably seen that around the country, is reducing traffic in some of these bigger cities to encourage people to get out and walk around and not be on tight sidewalks like like in New York and Chicago and LA and some of those places, although nobody walks around in LA. And then, as we are reopening and the weather's so beautiful, I mean, it just seemed like maybe an opportunity to explore around the square in Englewood, where people don't have patio or rooftop seating. I mean, out in the 39th Street corridor, although I certainly would be open to other areas of the city as well, they mostly have patio seating where people can sit outside. And I just think consumer confidence might increase if people could sit outside and eat. I asked Zach and Lisa Phelps to explore that idea with Tom Scannell and see if there would be a way for us to do that. And it might give us a pretty good preview of, when we do the streetscape, is that something that people are really going to take advantage of? I mean, if we were to create wider side bump outs and wider sidewalks to allow for outdoor cafe type dining, and if people would take advantage of that. So that's how that idea got going and started getting talked about.
So I wanted to follow up and tell you that, we talked about it at the Square board meeting on Friday, and they were very much in favor of doing something like this. And they are actually they're working on a map, basically, that they hope to have ready for the council to consider on Monday, which would show what their recommendations would be as far as areas where where you might temporarily close some parking areas to increase that outdoor seating. And I know that the Councilman Perkins, you talked to the Englewood Business Association, and I don't believe in their case they weren't really talking about taking over any parking areas, but I think they like the idea of the outside, expanding outside, basically, in a general sense.
Yeah, they were very much in favor of doing the outside eating, alcohol permitting for sure. Road dieting or anything like that, or restrictions wouldn't work well there. But certainly they have large sidewalks to take advantage of that, those areas and those open spaces.
And I don't know if anybody's really talked about. I know that in the Square, they right off the bat weren't. And we told them that everything is up for discussion, but I don't think they felt that there was a need to actually close streets and like they in Westport. And talking to Lisa, Phelps, as the mayor mentioned, she's been looking at this, and her initial thought was perhaps, we wouldn't need to do that in this case here. Mm-hmm. Perhaps we could look at the future traffic flow pattern, though, as a way to free up parking areas that you could do. But anyway, the idea is great. I think everybody is trying to put on their thinking caps here. So I hope we'll have something for the council to do on Monday. And so Mayor, did you want to, did you have some other thoughts on that? Or you want to let Tom maybe jump in about the regulatory requirements?
Yeah, Tom. I was just going to say, I'm not Tom or Mayor Ware, but I did have one idea. What about, would there be any opportunity to use the market as an outdoor dining space for restaurants on the square, like almost like a community outdoor opportunity over the weekends or something?
Well, I honestly, Lori, I did talk with some people about maybe that, but it's really a pain. I mean, we love our farmers market and we definitely designed it as an event space, but seeing as it has really a very limited prep area, it's a little difficult. I mean, we've done a lot of buffet dinners there, which we will not do. I mean, that's that's totally, and I just think it might be a challenge. I mean, I'm certainly open to any ideas, but it might be challenging. And that being a city facility, will be honest with you, I'm very reluctant to incur any liability
Absolutely.
to the city and to the taxpayers. So I would say it would be a neat idea in normal times, but it might be a little challenging at this phase. I didn't have anything else. I mean, I'm interested in hearing what Tom has to say about, the nuts and bolts and regulating that. If that would be.
So when I first got this idea kind of thrown at me, kind of did some research, and there was something that I found from a few years ago that the city had already allowed the Inglewood Business District as well as the Independence Square to use certain public properties, kind of the sidewalks and public parking lots, to allow them to consume alcohol on those. And the process that ordinance kind of outlined was a special event permit. So each time that a restaurant would have this, they would have a special event. So we still have to kind of track down that, make sure that process is clean, that it's understandable, and that the businesses can follow that and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now with that. So it seems like it's doable from a regulatory standpoint. Now we just have to get some more information and see how that fits into what we already have in place on the ordinances, and adjust where we need to.
So let me ask, is that a special permit if we don't change anything, or something could be brought to the city council to temporarily change an ordinance to allow for this?
We could do either or. Initially, before doing the research, that's kind of what I was thinking of, was just bringing a something before the council to grant temporary permission to have these restaurants have outdoor dining and consumption of alcohol on these public spaces. But we can just adjust and see what their ultimate plan is, and what the Inglewood Business District, what their ultimate plan is, and then adjust accordingly.
John,
Yes, Dan.
I keep remembering our trip to Fort Collins, Colorado, and how their Old Town area was set up. And I always thought that, we need to make Independence Square a place where things are happening. And I think this is a move in the right direction. I think if we offer those kind of services on, an emergency basis like we're doing now, that it may lead us into a more permanent situation where we have outdoor dining and drinking spaces like Courthouse Exchange has.
Yeah, absolutely. This is taking advantage of this situation to do this expansion to see how well it may work. And as Mark was saying, depending on how successful this is, I mean, how do we expand our bump outs once we get the design going and some further permanency with designs and then follow construction, how the square may look and function completely different. So absolutely. So Tom, are you needing input from the square and also from Inglewood to help build your parameters of what you're wanting to submit to the council for Monday?
Yeah, that would be great help so that we can kind of frame this, make any adjustments as needed based on what they desire to do now and going into the future.
Okay. All right. I'll get with them. Mark and I will reach out to them to get their thoughts and ideas and some more specificness to you, Tom, so you can get this lined out for the council for Monday, so we can get moving and get our city reopening as safely and quickly as possible, for sure. With that, does anybody else have any questions or comments on this topic, or have any other comments that they would like to present?
I would just like to know if I have any ideas or brainstorming, who I should send that to. Tom, Mark, Adam?
Yes.
Yeah, send
Yes.
them to them all.
Okay.
We'd be happy to see anything you have. We'd really love, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
I'm nothing
Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
Mayor Bear, but my mind is always thinking of the bigger ideas. So I like to put them out there, and then you guys can figure out how to make them happen. So
That's the key. Find somebody that knows what they're doing, make these things come to life.
Well, with that, I want to thank everybody for the time. This is kind of a different, weird venue we're doing. Everything's a GoToMeeting or different kind of reality meeting. So with that, I will adjourn this meeting and we'll reconvene at a later time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.